first thing that strikes you is the silence, not the peaceful kind, nor the kind broken by the distant drone of machines or the hum of dormant reactors. It is a biological silence, thick, humid, heavy like the stillness inside a creature that is trying not to be noticed. The void outside the Tyranid bioship is a graveyard of shattered escorts and drifting debris. Yet once you pass through the outer membrane and cross into its threshold, even the faint echo of your own breath feels intrusive. The air clings to your lungs as though it resents being borrowed. Every inhalation tastes faintly of iron and something older, something primordial, something that does not want you here. The walls pulse first, a slow, rhythmic contraction ripples along the curved corridor in front of you, like muscles flexing beneath translucent skin. Thick veins glow faintly with bioluminescent fluid, carrying nutrients or chemical signals in strange, hypnotic patterns. There is no metal here, no wiring or alloy beams. Everything feels grown rather than constructed. Purposefully shaped yet unnervingly fluid. The floor depresses slightly beneath your boots, not soft, but alive enough to recoil from the weight. A faint vibration moves through it, as though the entire structure is bearing down through space using a form of motion. No human engineer would dare attempt. The air thrums faintly with that motion. You can feel it in your teeth. Even standing still, the ship feels aware. You take another breath, shallow this time, and the membrane behind you closes with a wet, sealing hiss. The outside world, stars, void, wreckages gone in an instant, swallowed behind layers of living tissue thick enough to stop a lance strike. The temperature rises. Condensation beads on the inner membrane, rolling down like droplets of sweat. Somewhere deeper within the ship, something large exhales and the air shifts with a low, predatory sigh. You are inside a creature, and a creature knows. The corridor stretches forward in an organic curve, branching into what appear to be arterial passageways. They pulse with muted color like signals flashing down nerves. You lift your weapon or imagine lifting one and find your hands trembling. It's not fear of being hunted. It's the realization that you are being measured. The hive mind does not look at you with eyes, nor does it peer through windows or ports. It studies you through the vibrations of your breath, the heat of your body, the chemical scent of your sweat. Every organ in this place is a sensor. Every surface is a receptor. The very walls seem to lean inward as if listening. You move forward. The floor ripples beneath your steps, not violently but subtly, adjusting its texture with each footfall. It grips, then relaxes as though tasting the pressure of your weight. The temperature deepens into a moist warmth that clings to skin and armor alike. Strands of fibrous tissue line the ceiling, twitching slightly whenever you pass under them, like the cilia of some deep-sea creature brushing against an intruder. Some are thicker, pulsing with fluid. Others end in sensitive nodes that shiver as you disturb the air. It is impossible to know which are sensory organs and which are simply morphological accidents. Born of alien biology. At first the silence remains steady. Then you sense something beneath it, a faint, throbbing rhythm. It is not a heartbeat. It is too slow, too vast, too layered. It reverberates in your ribs like distant thunder muffled through a planet's crust. The hive mind is not speaking. It is simply present, its psychic weight settling over your thoughts like a warm, suffocating blanket. Its focus does not fully touch you yet, but its attention grazes your mind with fleeting curiosity, as though deciding whether you are threat, prey, or simply irrelevant. Ahead, the passage opens into a wide chamber. The walls arch upward into a dome slick with organic sheen. Thick cords of tendons stretch across the ceiling like the ribs of a colossal lung. The air is warmer here, laced with the scent of ammonia, rotten fruit, and the metallic tang of raw protein. Small organisms skitter through the walls, tiny gaunt-like creatures without full bodies. Little more than animated skulls with crawling limbs. They scuttle along the outer membrane, puncturing it with needle tongues to extract fluids and inject others. They ignore you completely, as though you are too insignificant for their notice. A sound breaks the silence, a wet, rhythmic slapping. No, not slapping. Breathing. Something large inhales nearby. The floor beneath your boots bulges slightly, as though something beneath the membrane is repositioning itself. The chamber trembles and faint vibrations run along the walls. Then you see it dot to the left. Partially embedded in the flesh-covered wall lies a sensory organ the size of a tank turret. At first glance it resembles an eye, but as you stare, you realize it is more like an exposed mass of optic nerves fused into a single, rippling network. It swivels not physically, but through waves of chemical contraction. Its entire surface dilates, narrows, and refocuses as though the hive mind is turning its attention onto you. Heat flushes your skin. Your heartbeat accelerates. You exhale too quickly and regret it immediately because the organ reacts to that, too. Contracting once, sharply, like a pupil-narrowing dot it saw you breathe. A low whisper of psychic pressure skims the edges of your consciousness. It does not form words, but the sensation is unmistakable. Not threat, not food. Curiosity. You feel it dismiss you, the way a colossus dismisses the flutter of a fly. You take advantage of that momentary lack of interest to move deeper. The tunnel beyond slopes downward. Fluid drips from the ceiling in slow, viscous trails. The walls tighten around you slightly, channeling your movement toward a region where faint light pulses in steady rhythm. The air grows thicker, saturated with the scent of biolytic acids, ahead. The tunnel widens again, but this time into a structure that feels less like a chamber, and more like a throat. Moist membranes twitch gently, opening and closing like valves. Deep within, you can hear the slow churn of digestion. Warm steam rises from somewhere below, brushing your face with humid breath. You realize with sudden clarity that you're walking toward the ship's feeding tracts, the beginnings of its internal harvesting. Organs. And though it is not currently digesting anything, the entire space shivers with anticipation. It is waiting for biomass. It is waiting for worlds. A dull tremor shakes the corridor. You freeze. The walls ripple outward as if reacting to something approaching from deeper within. The tremor strengthens. The membranes quiver. A low hum builds in the air, a vibration that crawls under your fingernails, into your teeth, through your skull. A shadow emerges. It steps into the chamber with fluid grace despite its massive size. Its carapace is dark, glistening with mucus. Its limbs end in scything talons sharp enough to carve armor. Its elongated head turns toward you. Its maw opening to release a hiss that vibrates the membrane under your feet. A hive guard. It stares at you with cold, alien focus. You do not breathe. For a moment, it stands perfectly still, assessing the shape of your body. Your heat, your scent, your posture. You sense no individual thought behind its movements. Only the impression of being observed through a lens far larger than this creature's skull. Then the hive mind brushes your consciousness again. Not threat, not prey. Not relevant. The hive guard turns away. It moves past you. Its heavy limbs thudding softly but firmly against the membrane floor. The walls tremble under its weight. It disappears into another tunnel, vanishing as though swallowed by the living maze. You exhale again. Too loudly. This time, something hears. A soft rustling rises from the tunnel behind you. Small claws scrape against the organic floor. Wet clicking noises multiply in the darkness. You take a step back as the rustling intensifies, spreading up the walls. Into the ceiling. Then dozens of small shapes drop from above. Ipprs. Tiny. Worm-like bodies attached to snapping jaws the size of your fist. They swarm toward you, not with malice but with instinctive hunger. The hive mind may not care about you, but these creatures operate on simpler programming. A drop of blood, a breath out of place, a vibration in the membrane. These are enough to trigger their feeding response. You back away slowly. They follow. Their movements ripple through the chamber like a wave of living teeth. You search for an exit and spot a narrow opening along the right wall, thin but passable. You slip through it just as the swarm reaches your boots. Their jaws clamping shut on air. The membrane seals behind you, blocking their advance. You stand in a smaller tunnel, breathing hard. The hive mind touches your thoughts again, not gently, but with irritation this time, as if displeased by your proximity to a feeding cycle. Your presence is tolerated, not welcomed. The ship shifts slightly around you, adjusting its internal structures the way an organism flexes muscles around an irritant. The air grows warmer. The lighting dims. You press on. A few meters ahead. The tunnel opens into a chamber unlike the others. Instead of pulsing membranes and warm walls, the surfaces here are harder, lined with plates of calcified tissue. They interlock like ribs around a central pod. Thick tubes extend from the ceiling, pumping fluid into the pod. The air smells strongly of chemical agents, spore chemicals, genetic fluids, pheromonal signals. A birthing chamber. You approach slowly. The pod's surface twitches. Something inside is moving, pushing against its walls. Thin cracks appear. A wet, tearing sound reverberates through the room as the pod splits open. A fully formed termagant tumbles out. It lies on the membrane, twitching, its limbs unfolding like those of a new. The carnifex's roar still echoes in your skull long after you flee the birthing chamber, long after the membrane behind you seals shut and muffles the beast's thunderous breathing. The sound vibrates in your ribs, rattles through your teeth, and lingers behind your eyes like the afterimage of a bright light. It was not just a roar of anger or hunger. It was a rejection, an instinctive declaration from the living ship, that you had stepped beyond the boundary of tolerance, that your presence had shifted from irrelevant to intrusive. The corridor you tumble into feels narrower than before, as if the ship itself tightens around you, irritated by your escape. The floor ripples with each movement, urging you downward, deeper, away from whatever purpose the previous chamber served. You push forward, breath hitching, heart pounding, mind racing with primal fear. The corridor slopes in a strange curvature, neither horizontal nor vertical, spiraling gently like the innards of a vast, breathing helix. The walls throb with increasing intensity, carrying rhythmic waves of bioluminescent blue and violet. The air becomes heavier, drenched in a humid, organic scent that clings to your nostrils. You exhale into the oppressive warmth and feel the ship react again. A faint flutter of movement in the ceiling as sensory threads adjust to the sound. Somewhere deep within the bioship, a distant tremor echoes steady, slow, powerful. It could be the heartbeat of the creature, or perhaps the subtle shift of massive digestive organs, or the psychic pulse of the hive mind's attention drifting somewhere nearby. It is impossible to know, but with every tremor, every pulse, the walls around you respond, as if acknowledging the internal motion with their own subtle contractions. The corridor widens at last into a vast chamber lit by a soft green glow. You freeze at the threshold. Before you lies something that resembles a cathedral built not from stone but from living bone and flesh. Towering pillars of chitin arch upward, supporting a dome lined with translucent membranes that ripple gently as fluids flow behind them. Thick, pulsating vines stretch across the ceiling, carrying luminous liquid in slow, measured pulses. The entire room hums with organic activity, alive with motion and purpose. At the chamber's center is a massive pit filled with viscous, swirling fluid. It churns slowly, releasing puffs of steam that smell faintly of ammonia and blood. The surface glows faintly from bioluminescent microorganisms writhing within. Around the pit, dozens of fleshy sacs are suspended from thick tendons, each one twitching gently like sleeping lungs. The sacs vary in size, some barely larger than your torso, others as massive as a rhino transport. Some quiver with internal motion, others sit still, their contents dormant or already harvested. These are biovats. This is where the tyranids forge life. The first sac splits with a wet rip that echoes through the chamber. You instinctively crouch behind a ridge of cartilage as a torrent of thick, nutrient fluid pours out. Something slithers free, a half-formed gaunt, its limbs still limp, its carapace soft. It gasps its first breath, a wet, rasping sound that sends ripples through the vat beneath it. Strands of umbilical tissue cling to its back until small feeder organisms scuttle out, to bite the strands away and consume them. The newborn creature twitches, then stands shakily, its movement guided by instinct rather than consciousness. It does not see you. It does not need to. A sap's pulse flashes through the chamber, felt, not heard. The newborn stiffens, receiving instructions you cannot comprehend, then scurries toward a tunnel on the far side. Its steps leave small indentations in the membrane floor, which swell shut moments after it passes. Another sac splits, then another. The sound becomes rhythmic, like organic machinery unfolding assembly lines with terrifying efficiency. There is no rest, no hesitation, no inefficiency. Every motion of the sacs, the feeder organisms, the fluid pumps, the tendons, the membranes, all of it contributes to the precise, unstoppable creation of war beasts. You step deeper into the chamber, compelled by equal parts horror and fascination. The air thickens with the smell of nutrients and dissolving matter. You notice pits where biological waste is funneled downward into digestive membranes, recycled continuously through the ship's internal systems. Nothing is wasted here. Every cell is repurposed. Every droplet of fluid holds meaning. The tyranids do not construct, they metabolize. The hum shifts suddenly. The chamber darkens for a moment as the bioluminescent fluids in the ceiling veins dim, redirected towards something deeper in the ship. A low vibration rolls through the room, and the sacs sway gently in response. The floor beneath you tightens, gripping your boots slightly before relaxing again. Something important is happening. A shadow moves within the central vat. The fluid churns, releasing a deeper plume of steam. Shapes emerge beneath the glowing surface, too large to be gaunts, too small to be carnifexes. Their limbs are elongated. Their heads are smooth and narrow. Their bodies move with serpentine grace beneath the viscous broth. At first you think they are swimming, but then you realize the vat is reshaping itself around them. Tendon-like structures shift downward, creating channels that guide them. The surrounding sacs pulse harder, pumping additional fluid into the mix. These creatures are not being born. They are being modified. The hive mind is adjusting them. You take a step closer and feel the air vibrate sharply, like a tuning fork struck by an unseen hand. A psychic pulse washes over you. Not strong enough to break your mind, but powerful enough to silence every thought for a heartbeat. It is not anger. It is not alarm. It is focus. The bioship is redirecting its resources, accelerating the development of these organisms, sculpting them into something needed for an imminent conflict. The creatures in the vat suddenly erupt from the fluid in unison, their bodies snapping into rigid formation. They stand atop the viscous surface as though it were solid. Their eyes glow faintly, reflecting the bioluminescent currents around them. You count 8, maybe 10 lean, agile organisms resembling lictors but smaller, faster. Their limbs tipped with slender talons shaped for infiltration. You realize with sinking dread that you are not witnessing birth. You are witnessing optimization. The hive mind is not experimenting. It is upgrading. The creatures leap from the vat and disappear into the nutrient fog that curls along the floor. The fog rises around your legs, warm and clinging. You retreat from the advancing haze, aware that your outline, your heat signature, and your movement pattern are being catalogued even now by unseen sensory nodes lining the walls. You glance upward and see clusters of tiny sacs no larger than your palm quivering gently. They are attached to the ceiling by delicate tendons, their membranes thin enough to reveal swirling fluid inside. When you squint, you notice something floating within each sac, specks of matter assembling into microscopic forms. They spin, grow, fuse, and split in rapid succession. Spore mines, this ship is seeding them constantly. The sacs detach without warning, drifting downward like jellyfish. They hover for a moment, then squeeze sharply, propelling themselves into narrow-side tunnels where living vents inhale them. You realize those vents lead to the ship's external launchers. These spores will be shot toward planets, ships, void installations, any target within range. The process is endless and self-sustaining. The chamber suddenly brightens. A large section of the wall retracts, like a pair of eyelids sliding open. Behind it lies another vast space, this one darker, colder, filled with vertical shafts lined with thick chitin. The shafts rise and fall like the throats of giant creatures swallowing in rhythm. Massive shapes descend through these shafts, carried by muscular contractions. You move closer, careful not to disturb whatever rituals unfold here. A colossal organism emerges from one of the shafts, suspended by tendons that contract and expand like the strands of a colossal web. Its body is swollen, covered in layers of thick armor that has not yet hardened. Its limbs are folded inward like a chrysalis in mid-emergence. When it reaches the chamber floor, the tendons release it, and it slams onto the membrane with a wet impact. Fluid sprays outward. The organism twitches violently, trying to stabilize itself. A heavy drone vibrates through the room as massive feeder arms descend from the ceiling. These arms are covered in pulsing pores that secrete biolytic acids. They attach themselves to the creature, melting sections of its armor, reshaping them, then ray-hardening the chitin with bursts of chemical accelerators. The process is horrifyingly similar to industrial refinement, but performed entirely through biological means. The creature roars weakly. It is not fully born, nor fully obedient yet. The hive mind pulses again, and the roar dies in its throat. You take a step back as the creature's spine elongates, new ridges forming along its back. The feeder arms retract. A faint psychic tremor passes through you. You know somehow that this is not a standard Tyranid strain. It is a variant crafted specifically for the next engagement, a living weapon forged in minutes. As you observe, a series of smaller creatures, little more than nervous systems, wrapped in muscle, crawl beneath the newly formed organism and begin chewing away the remaining sac tissue attached to its limbs. They consume the leftovers, recycling the biomass into their own bodies. Once they are finished, they scuttle away into maintenance burrows. You turn away from the spectacle, heart pounding. The sheer scale of biological production happening here is overwhelming. Every sac. The path the bioship opens for you narrows into a long, descending tunnel where the air grows colder and the pressure against your skin thickens, until it feels as though the atmosphere is becoming viscous. Moisture beads along the walls, forming slow-moving rivulets of iridescent fluid that carry faint warmth. Each drop that falls onto the floor dissolves into steam before spreading into the air, like ghostly breath, with every step downward. The sound of the ship itself deepens, no longer a rhythmic pulse, but a layered vibration that resonates in your bones. It feels as if you are walking into the throat of something that is not simply alive, but listening more intently with every heartbeat. The walls change texture as you descend. The fleshy membranes give way to bands of fibrous tissue that twitch in slow, undulating patterns. Tiny, needle-like cilia line the edges, brushing against your arms and shoulders, not aggressively but inquisitively, tasting chemical traces on your skin as if cataloging your presence. With clinical fascination, the air thickens with pheromonal scents, none of them familiar, none of them comforting. You inhale deeper than you intend to, and the chemical tang leaves your tongue numb for a moment. A faint buzzing sensation builds at the edge of your mind, like static creeping slowly toward your consciousness. The hive mind is paying attention, not fully, not directly, but enough for the air to hum with psychic residue. The tunnel opens abruptly into a chamber of staggering scale, a cavernous space shaped like the hollowed interior of a massive skull. The walls curve outward and upward, into a dome studded with cluster-node spherical growths that pulse with faint light, and vibrate with a frequency that prickles the hair on your arms. They resemble eyes without pupils, watching without gaze, absorbing without sight. The floor is uneven, formed of layered plates of organic chitin. Between the plates, partially transparent fluid circulates, glowing with a ghostly inner radiance that casts flickering highlights across the chamber. A low, resonant hum fills the space, so deep it seems to vibrate through your bones rather than into your ears. At first you think it is the ship's internal motion, the shifting of vast organs, or the rumble of digestion deep within some dark abyss. But the longer you listen, the more you realize the sound isn't a single tone. It is a tapestry of frequencies woven together, countless voices murmuring in harmony. Layered whispers that swell through the air like currents of cold water. They are not speaking words, they are thinking. You have entered the sap's nexus, a place where individual creatures cease to matter, where the ocean of the hive minds will flows most clearly, where commands transform into instinct and instinct transforms into action. This is where thoughts become orders, where life becomes weapon, where the will of the entire fleet condenses into a single overwhelming presence. You step forward cautiously. At the center of the chamber stands a towering organism, unlike any you have seen. It resembles a living pillar sculpted from bone, sinew, and crackling nerve tissue. Tendrils of thin muscle extend from its base, anchoring it into the floor. Its elongated skull-like structure, rises almost 10 meters high, crowned with branching antennae that sway gently though there is no wind. The creature does not move, it does not breathe, yet its presence weighs on the chamber like a gravitational field. A sap's node, not a creature that fights or feeds, but a living organ of communication, a bridge between the bioship's inner structure and the consciousness that spans its entire fleet. You feel your mind grow heavier the closer you approach it. The air in front of you warps with psychic distortion, shimmering faintly as if heat rises from the ground. A strange pressure builds behind your eyes, as if invisible fingers press gently against your thoughts. The hive mind is aware of you now not as a threat, not as prey, but as an anomaly drifting too close to the currents of its internal network. You feel your breath hitch in your throat as the chamber's whispers intensify, layered thoughts swirl around you, brushing against your consciousness in probing patterns. Each pulse feels like the echo of an oceanic tide, surging with the collective awareness of millions of tyrannid organisms thinking in unison. You take a tentative step closer. The sap's node reacts. Its antennae twitch, releasing a subtle flash of iridescent light. A wave of psychic noise ripples through the chamber, sweeping across your mind with the gentle violence of a blade drawn across silk. Your knees buckle for a moment as the sheer weight of the signal presses against your thoughts. You grit your teeth, forcing yourself to remain upright even as your muscles tremble. The hive mind does not speak in words, it speaks in pressure, in sensation, in instinct. A pulse flows into you, not a message, but a question shaped from raw sensation. It feels like something vast searching your memories, scanning your past. In broad strokes, tasting your fear, measuring your biology. It sees you not as a self, not as a person, but as an object defined by chemical signatures. You do not hear meaning, but you understand. It is asking, why are you here? You cannot answer. You cannot think clearly. The pressure intensifies, swelling around your thoughts like a storm of cold water. Your vision blurs at the edges. Black static curls into your awareness. The walls seem to tilt, warp, shift. You fight to keep your mind intact. Another pulse strikes you heavier this time. This one is colder, more concentrated. Not threat, not prey, not useful, not desired. The sap's node shifts its focus. The probing pressure withdraws slowly, leaving behind a throbbing ache behind your eyes. You collapse to one knee. Exhaling shakily, the whispers in the chamber soften, though they never fade. The presence of the hive mind recedes slightly, as if turning its attention towards something more relevant. A movement catches your eye. On the far side of the chamber, silhouettes stir in the fog, creatures emerging from dark recesses like shadows taking physical shape. At first they blend with the chamber's pulsating walls, but as they approach, their outlines harden into distinct forms. Tall, slender bodies clad in barbed carapace, elongated skulls lined with needle teeth, eyes that do not glow yet burn with predatory awareness. Warriors. Not gaunts, not newborns. Fully matured, fully aware, fully woven into the web of the hive mind. Their heads tilt in perfect synchrony as they observe your presence, not with curiosity, but with the dispassionate appraisal of predators, who have no need for instinct. They are the knife wielded by something far larger. You rise slowly, though every instinct in your body screams to remain still. The warriors do not attack. They do not vocalize. They simply move aside with smooth precision, creating an open pathway that leads deeper into the chamber. The hive mind has chosen not to eliminate you. Not yet. Your presence is tolerated because the flow of its attention has shifted to a more pressing priority. You sense it in the sudden stiffening of the warrior's posture, the quickening pulse in the chamber, the subtle tremor beneath your feet. Something is approaching from above. You look upward and see the ceiling split open like the lid of a ribcage. Tendons retract. Chitin folds away. A massive tube of translucent flesh lowers into the chamber, pulsing with luminous veins. At the tube's base is a bulbous node that vibrates with psychic intensity. The warriors kneel. You feel the air crackle with energy. A zoanthrope descends. Its elongated form floats gently, suspended by psychic force alone. Its long cranial crest shimmering. With faint bioluminescence, it settles just above the ground, tendrils of energy licking the air. Own it! Its single, unblinking eye focuses with eerie precision on the sap's node. The node's antennae shift, bending toward the zoanthrope in a posture reminiscent of reverence or submission. The hive mind strengthens its signal. A surge of psychic energy erupts between the two organisms. A silent lightning strike that makes your hair stand on end. The chamber darkens as the bioluminescent fluids in the walls drain into the floor, leaving only the flickering glow of the zoanthrope's pulsing crown. The whispers in the chamber sharpen into a coherent resonance. You feel the hive minds. Focus intensify not on you but on the ship, the fleet, the galaxy beyond. The zoanthrope's body convulses softly, channeling unimaginable energy between nodes scattered throughout the vessel. You hear not words, but impressions, images shaped from sensation, meaning formed from instinct, a world ahead, a scent of biomass, a threat profile assessed and dismissed, a defense grid mapped, a hunger sharpened. The sap's web vibrates with preparation. The bioship is not merely alive, it is thinking, planning, strategizing, not through neurons but through an ocean of consciousness. The warriors rise as one. The zoanthrope floats backward, its body trembling with psychic aftershocks. You see faint cracks along its cranial crest, damage from channeling such immense force. Moments later, feeder tendrils descend from the ceiling, wrapping around it gently, lifting it back into the septic conduit above. When the ceiling seals shut again, the chamber is plunged into near darkness. You stand frozen, breathing softly, heart pounding. The whispers lessen, the pressure eases. The hive mind's gaze shifts away, but something remains. A residue in your thoughts, an imprint of psychic presence that clings like smoke, lingering long after the fire has passed. You sense faint echoes of the commands that just flowed through the ship. They flicker across your awareness like drifting embers. Approach the target. Prepare the tendrils. Sharpen the weapon. You stagger back, overwhelmed. The deeper the ship pulls you, the more the air thickens with an unseen pressure that slips into your thoughts like a rising tide. It does not feel like intrusion at first, not violent, not invasive, not a shattering force, but something far subtler, like the gentle tightening of a hand around the edges of your mind. A suggestion, a presence, a gravity not measured in mass but in intention. It grows with each step you take into the pulsing corridors, shaping the very rhythm of your heartbeat, until your breath seems to fall in time with the slow, omnipresent pulse of the bioship itself. You are no longer merely walking through a creature, you are walking along the edge of something older than fear, older than instinct, older than the Imperium's oldest nightmares, a consciousness that has no beginning, no individuality, no mercy, a consciousness that spans stars and sees all organisms as temporary shapes, waiting to be broken down into nutrient streams. The hive mind does not think as mortals understand thought. It does not weigh decisions. It does not hesitate. It moves, with the same inevitability as hunger, as decay, as gravity. The sap's echoes from the previous chamber still cling to your skull. Faint sparks of alien meaning that flicker at the edges of your awareness. They flash in strange moments when your foot touches the membrane floor and feels the ship subtly shift beneath you, when a distant tremor ripples through the biovessel's colossal organs, when the air vibrates with the faint psychic hum that flows through every living cell around you. These echoes form no words, yet carry weight. The sensation grows stronger as you descend deeper, as though the ship's internal pathways funnel thoughts downward into a vast reservoir of command. The corridor curves sharply and plunges into darkness. For a moment you cannot see anything except the faint glow of bioluminescent veins, shifting beneath the membrane walls. Then, slowly, the darkness itself begins to pulse with dim purple light. Shapes appear, long, tendril-like structures hanging from the ceiling, each one twitching softly in response to your movement. They sway above your head like the whiskers of some gargantuan creature, sensing prey in its environment. The air is warmer here, dense enough to bead on your skin in droplets of condensation. Something stirs behind the walls. You hear it before. You see it, a low, resonant rumble, like an ocean shifting beneath the crust of a world. The vibration ripples through the chamber, raising goose flesh along your arms. The membrane wall bulges outward, stretching as something massive slides just beneath its surface. You catch only a faint impression, a silhouette thicker than a banner blade, covered in plates of hardened chitin. Its body gliding through the ship's internal arteries, like a leviathan swimming through viscous water. It does not reveal itself. It does not need to. Its presence alone is enough to tighten your breath. The hive mind is shifting its attention. You feel the pressure change as though the ship itself exhales against your thoughts. A new chamber opens before you, vast and shadowed. The moment you step inside, the air thickens with psychic energy so heavy it feels like an invisible fog. Pressing against your chest, you pause at the threshold, steadying yourself. This chamber is different, not a place of birthing or forging, not a place of digestion or storage, but a place where thought itself seems to pool and deepen like water collected in a cavern. The floor curves downward into a gradual basin. At the basin's center lies a great nodal swirling sphere of translucent tissue, suspended by dozens of fleshy tendons. The sphere pulses with veined light, shifts with rhythmic contractions, and emits faint shockwaves of psychic energy that ripple through the room. The air trembles with each pulse, vibrating softly against your skin. Small, jelly-like organisms float lazily around it, tethered by thin strands of fleshy fiber. They drift in hypnotic patterns, their bodies flickering with faint flashes of alien bioluminescence. Your vision blurs for a moment. The psychic density in this chamber is unlike anything you have felt before. This is a septic heart, not the only one on the bioship, but perhaps the largest. A place where the ship's entire consciousness converges, where signals from every creature aboard funnel inward before radiating outward again. As unified will, you sense it in your bones. The hive mind observes the galaxy from here, not as distant stars or maps, but as sense vibrations and patterns of biomass waiting to be rearranged. You approach the sphere. The moment your foot touches the basin floor, the node reacts. Its tendons contract sharply, tightening like cords drawn taut. A wave of light pulses through its veins, bright enough to momentarily illuminate the entire chamber. The jelly-like organisms hiss softly, if that sound can be called a hiss, and drift closer to the node in trembling formation. Then the psychic pressure strikes. It does not hit your mind like a weapon. It envelops it, warm, heavy, inescapable. You gasp without meaning to, your knees weaken. The chamber spins. For a moment everything fades into darkness except the rhythmic pulse of the node. Then the pressure sharpens, condensing into a single point that presses into your thoughts with terrible intimacy. You feel the hive mind's attention focus, not the diluted echo from earlier chambers, not the faint pressure through walls or membranes, but full attention, like the sun turning its face toward a drop of water. Your breath stops. Every instinct inside you screams to run, to escape, to hide from this colossal awareness. But your legs refuse to respond. The pressure wraps around your mind and squeezes gently, not enough to break, but enough to show that breaking you would require no effort at all. The chamber fades. Your vision dissolves into a swirling haze of shapes and impressions. You are no longer standing. You are drifting, suspended in a psychic sea where the currents carry fragments of thought so vast and alien they barely register as meaning. You see flashes of worlds, some consumed, others newly discovered. You feel the cold hunger of a million gaunts waiting to be unleashed. You sense the quiet hum of tyrannid ships, drifting through the void like silent predators searching for their next heartbeat of prey. And beneath it all, you feel the hive mind's central truth. Everything exists to be consumed. Everything must be broken down. Everything is raw material. The vision shifts. For a moment you sense the hive mind reaching across the void, brushing against the minds of psychers light years away, watching through the eyes of lictors stalking in silence, tasting the chemical trails of prey fleeing across devastated worlds. Its awareness is not scattered. Each perception is a thread woven into a single tapestry of intent. You feel your own consciousness pulled closer, pressed against the edges of this vast web. For a heartbeat too long, you feel the hive mind consider whether your mind could be remade, reshaped, grafted into its network. Your body convulses as the pressure intensifies, Your thoughts fray at the edges. The darkness closes around you. But then the node releases. The weight lifts so abruptly you collapse to your hands. Gasping, sweat running down your face. The air around you crackles with residual psychic energy, but the crushing presence has faded. You blink rapidly, vision returning in pieces. The node's pulsing glow flickers. Dimming again to its previous rhythm, the hive mind has dismissed you. Your insignificance has saved you. But something lingers, the faintest whisper of meaning carried on the last psychic pulse that brushed your mind. Not a sentence, not a command, just a sensation, a direction, a motion, a gravitational pull of intention. The ship is preparing to strike. You rise shakily, feeling the chamber's pulse quicken. The jelly-like organisms drift upward, their bodies glowing brighter. The tendons around the node thicken, darken, and pull tighter as if fortifying the structure. The floor trembles beneath your feet. Through the walls, you sense the motion of massive tendrils awakening, spreading outward like enormous roots stretching through the void. Fluid pumps into defensive sacs. Digestion pools begin to ripple. Bioforges accelerate production. The entire ship shifts into a state of readiness. And you realize the hive mind did not show you these impressions by accident. It showed you because something in its ancient, unfathomable consciousness recognized your awareness as a kind of flicker of stimulus worth, acknowledging for a moment, like the faint scent of prey carried on the wind. Not enough to kill you, not enough to consume you, but enough to measure you. The presence begins to fade as the ship's consciousness shifts outward, focusing on the space beyond the walls, on the planet or fleet or organism waiting to be consumed. The last whisper of psychic residue fades from your thoughts, leaving behind an echo that feels like hunger brushing across the back of your mind. The septic heart retreats into silence. The warriors emerge from their positions, moving with precise, emotionless grace. They form a corridor with their bodies, not as an invitation, but as a consequence of new commands flowing through the ship. Their movements no longer concern you. They are focused outward now, aligned with the hive mind's strategy for the imminent assault. The membrane behind them opens. The ship has decided your path. You step through the living gateway as the SAP's chamber dims behind you, its glow swallowed by the closing walls. The air shifts once more, growing hotter, thicker, charged with the unmistakable scent of accelerating metabolism. Something in the distance roars, not a creature, but the ship itself, exhaling a psychic signal that shakes the air like a distant shockwave. You swallow hard. The corridor that opens before you feels different from the others, warmer, thicker, and saturated with a scent that clings to your lungs even before you take your first step inside. It reeks of decay, but not the rot of abandonment or the stench of death left to stagnate. This is purposeful decay, cultivated rot, the sweet sour perfume of life being unmade and remade with ruthless efficiency. The air vibrates with a faint bubbling undercurrent, a sound that resembles boiling water but carries a deeper, more organic resonance. As you walk forward, the walls shift hue from dull violet to a deep, pulsing crimson. As though blood rushes through the vessels encasing the passage, you descend a long winding ramp of hardened chitin, the curvature of the floor sloping downward in a way that suggests gravity itself is being redirected toward a single, vast destination. The deeper you go, the thicker the humidity becomes. Moisture clings to your skin in heavy droplets until your clothes feel slick against your body. A faint steam rises from the walls, fogging your vision in a thin, shimmering haze that catches the bioluminescent glow of the veins pulsing throughout the structure. When you breathe, the air feels heavier, almost chewable, laden with organic particles too small to see but dense enough that every inhale feels like swallowing liquid. You hear it before you see it. A low, rumbling churn, steady, rhythmic, all-encompassing. It vibrates through the ramp beneath your feet, shaking loose tiny droplets from the ceiling above. Your pulse instinctively aligns with the sound, a biological mimicry of rhythm that you cannot control. The grind of digestion becomes a pulse you feel in your bones. A deeper roar follows, echoing through the cavern ahead, like a volcano letting out a long breath beneath the surface. And then the chamber opens. You step into a cavern so massive, It feels like stepping inside the hollowed-out interior of a planet. Its dome stretches far above your head, lost in layers of steam and flickering bioluminescent haze. The chamber is not illuminated by any single source of light, but by thousands of glowing sacs embedded into the walls, drifting spores that float lazily across the air, and rivers of radiant fluid that flow in thick currents across the fleshy ground. Everything pulses slow, deliberate, alive with metabolic purpose. This is the digestion core, the heart of the Tyranid's eternal hunger. The pools dominate the chamber, colossal basins carved into the ship's internal flesh, filled with swirling, molten fluid that glows orange, red, and sickly green in places where chemical reactions intensify. The surfaces of the pools ripple like the skin of a great beast breathing beneath the surface. Thick strands of congealing biomass float within, dissolving into nutrient slurry before being drawn downward by unseen currents. The stench rises in hot waves, heavy with acids and vaporized proteins. The air tastes metallic, as though the humidity carries dissolved blood. A corpse floats past a partially dissolved torso of some long-dead organism, stripped of skin, the bones showing through in places where the acids have not yet consumed it. The face is gone, melted into featureless pulp, but the impression of its former shape lingers for a moment before it sinks below the surface. The pool churns and the corpse vanishes entirely. You freeze! For the first time since entering the bioship, you truly understand the scale of what the Tyranids do, not metaphorically, not as a strategic description on an Imperial data slate. This is not war. This is hunger incarnate. Every world that falls feeds this place. Every creature consumed becomes raw material for evolution. Every memory, every culture, every city, every name, all of it melts into the same molten slurry. Erased utterly and forever. You step closer to the edge, drawn by morbid fascination. The floor near the pool softens under your weight, becoming almost spongy. Heat radiates upward in waves that make your skin prickle. Something shifts beneath the surface of the pool. A flash of chitin. A bone, a limb. It is impossible to tell if it once belonged to a human, an orc, an Aldari, or something else altogether. Here, identity has no meaning. A ripple travels across the surface, forming a small wave that slaps against the fleshy lip of the basin. Droplets spray upward, sizzling where they land. One droplet strikes the floor beside you, and the membrane hisses as it dissolves slightly before rapidly healing itself. The ship is alive enough to regenerate even inside its digestive depths. Movement draws your attention. On the far side of the chamber, a massive tendril lowers from the ceiling, gripping a cocoon of organic mass. The cocoon thrashes weakly. You hear muffled screams inside the fleshy sac, not words, but the primal sound of something dying. The tendril tilts. The cocoon dangles for a heartbeat, suspended above the pool like a piece of gore held by a butcher. Then it drops. The screams vanish instantly as the sac hits the surface. The pool ripples outward in concentric waves. Steam erupts in a violent hiss. The sac dissolves almost immediately, exposing a writhing shape inside a creature of bones and muscle partially melted by digestion acids. It claws upward for a moment before the slurry pulls it under. The surface closes over it. Nothing remains. You stagger backward, unable to tear your eyes away. Small feeder organisms crawl along the pool's edge, worm-like creatures with too many legs and too many mouths. They scoop thin layers of residue from the surface using broad, paddle-like appendages, then scuttle toward narrow vents in the wall. The vents open like gaping maws, inhaling the collected slurry with greedy slurps. The worms follow, slipping inside to deposit what they gathered before returning to the pool. They work tirelessly, endlessly, drawn not by instinct, but by orders flowing from the sap's web. Beside the largest pool, a series of slender, seeming skeletal structures rise from the floor, branching outward like the ribs of a colossal beast exposed to the air. Between these ribs stretch thin membranes that shimmer with shifting colors. As you approach, the membranes distort, displaying flickering impressions, shapes, silhouettes. Partial memories pulled from the dissolved biomass. You stop dead in your tracks. Faces appear in the membrane, distorted, melting, ephemeral. Human faces, orc jaws, alien eyes all stretched thin as though screaming beneath liquid skin. They appear for a moment, then dissolve back into swirling patterns of light and color. You watch in horrified fascination as a sequence of impressions ripples through the membranes. A burning city, a battlefield littered with corpses, a child reaching upward, a tower collapsing, a creature's final breath as it sinks beneath acid. You realize what you are seeing. These are Echo's residual sensory records stored briefly in the organic matrix, before being erased forever. The Tyranids do not care about memories, but that memory is matter, and matter must be processed. Another ripple travels across the membrane, forming a vibrant burst of color. For an instant you recognize the silhouette of an Astartes helm, one of the Emperor's angels of death. Armor fractured and melting into the acidic slurry. The image elongates, fractures, dissolves into molten red. The membrane goes still. You force yourself to look away, breath trembling. Something massive moves beyond the pools. You turn instinctively, just in time to see a colossal shape emerge from an opening in the far wall. The creature that steps forward dwarfs anything you've seen so far, taller than a Carnifex, broader than a Trigon, its body bristling with heavy plates of dark chitin. Its arms end in huge scything talons capable of smashing tanks. A series of tendrils trail from its back, twitching in anticipation. Its head tilts slowly as though tasting the air. Despite its monstrous size, it moves with unnatural quiet, its feet sinking slightly into the membrane floor before rising without sound. A hierodule, a giant of war, birthed from biomass drawn from 1,000 dead. It strides toward one of the pools, not to feed, but to release a massive load of semi-dissolved organic matter, clinging to the spines embedded along its flanks. It lowers itself onto a curved ridge of bone. Tendrils emerge from the floor, attaching themselves to its sides. A thick viscous fluid pulses into the tendrils, carrying dissolved nutrients extracted from the creature's last battle. The hierodule shivers once long, deep, and then breaks the tether. It turns without acknowledging your existence and disappears into another cavern. The chamber shifts around you. The pulls churn faster. Steam thickens. Membranes tremble. Something deeper within the bioship roars, not a creature's cry, but the grinding sound of organs shifting into a new metabolic cycle. You sense the ship preparing itself for intake. It has found prey. An entire world, perhaps, or a drifting hulk rich in biomass. The anticipation builds within these walls like a rising storm. A new tremor shakes the chamber. Fluid levels shift slightly as the ship changes angle. Large tendrils hanging from the ceiling contract, lowering nets of cartilage that funnel biomass toward the pools. The air grows hotter, more humid. The acidic vapor stings your eyes. You wipe sweat from your brow and feel your skin almost burn from contact with the air. The membranes along the floor ripple as they adjust to the coming influx. You take a step backward, instinctively seeking distance from the pools. But something emerges behind you. A soft vibration, a scraping of talons, a shadow stretching across the floor. You turn slowly. A creature rises from a secondary pool not meant for digestion, but for refinement. It emerges covered in thick slime, its body more skeletal than fleshed, its limbs elongated and thin. The chamber of digestion fades behind you, but its heat, its stench, its memory clings to your lungs long after you retreat into the living corridor. The air cools only slightly as you descend deeper, carried by a slow downward slope that feels less like a walkway and more like an esophagus, guiding prey towards some darker organ. The walls shift from pulsing crimson to a muted, bioluminescent green, and the oppressive humidity begins to thin. You breathe cautiously, uncertain if relief is real or simply the ship adjusting its internal chemistry. To accommodate a new phase of its journey, a distant vibration hums beneath your feet. At first it is faint, like the purr of a colossal creature sleeping deeply, but with each step it strengthens, thudding rhythmically in a pattern too deliberate to be a heartbeat, and too constant to be simple movement. This vibration grows into a steady, throbbing pulse that travels through the membrane floors, up your legs, and into your bones until your entire body seems to resonate with the ship's motion. It dawns on you slowly. You are approaching the engines, but in a Tyranid bioship. Nothing as crude or mechanical as engines exists. No pistons, no reactors, no fuel lines. Movement is living, instinctual, grown rather than assembled. The ship propels itself through void and darkness using methods no human has witnessed and survived. With sanity intact, the corridor opens at last. The chamber beyond is vast and immense hollow. Carved deep within the ship's organic structure, it stretches far above your head, vanishing into shadow. Its dome quivering as internal pressure shifts. The air is markedly cooler here, laced with thin vapor that swirls in delicate streams like drifting breath. The chamber's walls are covered in thick, corded muscles that contract and release in slow, powerful waves. Each contraction sends a tremor through the floor, a rhythmic flex that builds into an almost melodic thrum. This is propulsion made of flesh. You step forward and the floor changes under your feet harder, more rigid, reinforced by layers of dense chitin. The bioluminescent glow here is different, too, a faint, eerie blue that pulses in long waves across the walls. Before converging toward the center of the chamber, a low roar rises from somewhere deep within the ship, not a roar of aggression or hunger, a roar of ignition. A sudden blast of cold wind hits your face, sweeping your hair back and stinging your skin. It comes from a row of massive vents. Embedded into the far wall spiraled openings lined with fleshy ridges that flare open and contract like the gills of some colossal sea creature. Vapor pours from these vents in thick plumes, coiling into the chamber before being sucked toward the ceiling by unseen forces. The air vibrates harder now, your chest tightens, your breath grows shorter. You instinctively brace yourself. A deep organic boom shakes the chamber. The floor jolts. The walls pull inward slightly. Then silence. For a moment nothing moves. Nothing breathes. Nothing pulses. Then the entire chamber shudders violently as an enormous organ awakens. From the shadows at the chamber's core, you see movement, a colossal muscle band contracting with terrifying force. It ripples, tightening like the coils of a serpent. Beneath it, tendons as thick as structural beams thrum with stored energy. Fluid-filled sacs along the chamber walls expand rapidly, glowing brighter as pressure builds within them. These are the ship's void locomotion organs, vast biological engines designed not to burn fuel, but to manipulate internal pressure, external traction, and perhaps even micro-warp resonance to propel the creature through the void. The sacs pulse again, then they rupture, not explosively, but deliberately opening like valves to release massive jets of compressed vapor. The force shakes the chamber. Wind rushes past you again, sharper this time. The vents flare open wider, their internal ridges glowing faintly as gases flow through them in violent surges. The ship moves. You feel it, not as a shift under your feet, but as a full-body sensation like being carried through the void on the back of a living hurricane. The acceleration is smooth, eerie in its fluidity, more like a whale gliding through a deep ocean than a vessel thrusting through the vacuum. The chamber roars again as the sacs refill rapidly, drawing fluid through membrane channels that extend into the ship's deeper structures. You watch in awe and fear as the sacs expand with unnatural speed, their membranes stretching thin before thickening again in the space of a heartbeat. The ship does not burn fuel. It burns metabolism. Every pulse, every contraction, every surge of thrust is driven by chemical energy drawn from digestion pools and harvested biomass. Entire ecosystems, entire worlds could be broken down to fuel a single Tyranid fleet. You step closer to the central platform. The floor trembles as several smaller muscle bands begin to contract in coordination with the larger ones. These secondary organs create subtle adjustments in thruster method to steer, to pivot, to alter trajectory with fluid precision. You watch the muscles flex and release, their surfaces rippling with waves of bioluminescence that correspond to saptic signals flowing through the web. A massive shadow moves. Beyond the central engine, you freeze. From behind the primary propulsion organ emerges a creature of sheer monstrous scale. Its body is thick with armored plates that shimmer faintly under the chamber's blue light. Dozens of tendrils sprout from its back, each one tipped with sensory hairs that vibrate with the ship's motion. Its limbs end in thick, claw-like digits adapted for gripping the internal structures of the vessel. A Norn servitor, a colossal biomechanic organism whose sole purpose is to tend to the ship's engines, monitor pressure levels, repair damaged membranes, and adjust biological components to maintain optimal void performance. Its head resembles a skull fused with an insect's mandibles, though no eyes adorn its face. Instead, clusters of sensory nodules line its skull, twitching as it detects your presence. It does not acknowledge you beyond a pause in movement. Then it moves on, lumbering toward a cluster of glowing sacs. With movements far more delicate than its size suggests, it extends a tendril-tipped limb to press against a swollen membrane. The sac twitches, the fluid within shifts. The servitor emits a low vibration, communicating with the organ. The membrane responds, thickening slightly in preparation for the next pressure cycle. You watch the exchange with morbid fascination. This is engineering through biology, maintenance through evolution. A living engine serviced by living machines. The servitor turns away again, disappearing around the central propulsion muscle. You hear its heavy movements echo through the chamber, fading slowly as it retreats into the shadows. Another tremor shakes the floor. The sacs expand. The vents flare open. A deep, thunderous pulse ripples through the chamber. The ship accelerates again. You feel the pressure build in your chest, forcing you to brace yourself as the floor tilts slightly with the force. The motion is too smooth to integrate it with the ship's physiology to feel mechanical. It feels like riding the lungs of a creature exhaling in a long, powerful breath. As the engines stabilize, the chamber quiets slightly. The sacs continue to pulse, but the rhythm settles into something more controlled, more efficient. Thin membranes stretch across the chamber's high walls, vibrating softly as air circulates through channels that resemble organic ducts. You turn your gaze upward and notice something you missed. Before, translucent tubes running along the ceiling, filled with luminous fluid that shifts color with each pulse. These tubes connect to the propulsion sacs, feeding them nutrients drawn from digestion pools and chemical vats deeper within the ship. You watch as a surge of glowing fluid races through one tube, filling a sac to capacity in seconds before the sac contracts and releases another burst of thrust. The ship is alive. The engines are alive. The motion is alive. You feel the truth of it in your bones. This creature does not navigate space. It swims through the void. A sudden flicker of psychic pressure brushes your mind. Not a command. Not an attack. Just an echo and aftertaste of the hive mind shifting its attention toward navigation. You feel faint impressions, gravitational currents, stellar radiation. The distant scent of biomass drifting across the darkness. The ship adjusts course. The propulsion muscles flex again, shifting thrust vectors with seamless precision. The chamber trembles lightly before the vibration stabilizes. You imagine an Imperial ship's bridge filled with officers shouting corrections, adjusting thrusters, recalibrating systems, but here, everything happens through instinctive, biological efficiency. The hive mind thinks. The ship obeys. No hesitation. No error. No individuality to slow the process. As you stand in the vast engine chamber, surrounded by hidden tendrils, pulsing sacs, contracting muscles, and nerves that glow like constellations beneath living skin, you realize something unsettling. All of this, the walls, the engines, the servitors, the chambers, the pools, even the creatures moving within them is not separate. There is no ship. There is no crew. There is no infrastructure. There is only one organism. One purpose. One hunger. A low rumble shakes the chamber once more, deeper than before, vibrating through your chest. The sacs expand rapidly, preparing for another massive propulsion cycle. You step backward instinctively as steam blasts across the chamber, swirling around your feet. The ship emits a long, resonant roar, its engines preparing to drive it toward its next prey. The floor tilts. The walls pull tight. The pressure builds. The shift in the ship's motion is subtle at first, just a faint tightening of the floor. Beneath your boots, a quiet hum that deepens into a steady vibration, like the low growl of a beast preparing to pounce. But as you move deeper into the descending corridor, that vibration evolves into something heavier, something that crawls up your spine and settles at the base of your skull. You recognize it without needing to understand its mechanics. The bioship is preparing for conflict. The engines have awakened, the SEP's webs have aligned, and now the internal structures begin to rearrange themselves for war. The corridor shifts beneath you as if responding to commands unseen. The walls contract, pushing you forward with a gentle but inexorable force. The faint blue bioluminescence fades, replaced by pulsing streaks of deep red that glow like veins filled with heated blood. Each pulse feels synchronized with the rhythm of your own racing heart, creating a strange illusion that you and a ship have fallen into the same biological tempo. Ahead, the floor tilts downward sharply, leading into a darker passage where the air grows heavier and warmer. The scent of biomass fills the space, thick, sweet, metallic, a reminder of the digestion pools above. But here, the smell is sharper, fresher, as though the ship pumps nutrient fluids through arteries directly beneath your feet. You feel the first tremor before you hear it, a shudder rippling through the corridor, accompanied by a distant, muffled roar. It sounds like thunder struggling to break through layers of flesh and bone. The walls tense. Fibrous tissues tighten around the passage. Warm air rushes past you as ventilation organs widen, drawing oxygen deeper into the structure. You brace yourself instinctively, sensing that whatever lies ahead is not a place meant for intruders yet. The ship continues to guide you downward, as if your presence now aligns with its shifting pathways. The corridor opens suddenly into a vast network of tunnels. Some are narrow and twisting, barely wide enough for a human to crawl through. Others are huge, cavernous pathways lined with chitinous ridges that resemble the ribs of a monstrous beast. The air here vibrates with the thrum of movement, thudding footsteps echoing from nearby chambers, chittering sounds reverberating off the walls. The wet squelch of creatures climbing through ducts overhead. This is the gutway, an area where tyrannid organisms move, gather, prepare and deploy from within the bioship. Everything here exists in motion. Everything is in a state of readiness. The ship roars again, and this time the sound is closer. You step forward and the floor beneath your feet trembles violently, as something massive moves through the tunnel to your right. The wall bulges outward, stretching like flesh pressed from the inside. A loud scraping sound follows, accompanied by a deep, guttural hiss. You back away just as a towering silhouette pushes against the membrane. For a heartbeat it seems ready to tear through, but then it withdraws, the wall sinking inward again as the creature rushes down another artery of the ship. The roar of movement grows louder behind you. You turn and freeze. A wave of gaunts floods the corridor. They move in a single, fluid motion, claws scraping against the membrane floor. Carapaces glistening with organic sheen. Their narrow skulls bob as they sprint, their bodies responding to commands you cannot hear but feel as faint vibrations in the air. They stream past you in a living tide, ignoring your presence entirely. The air ripples with their speed. Their breath fills the corridor with the scent of wet chitin and acidic saliva. A lone gaunt pauses for a split second, its head tilting toward you. Its black eyes reflect the red glow of the veins pulsing through the corridor walls. For a moment, you feel it an empty vessel, thinking nothing, feeling nothing, existing only as an extension of the hive mind's purpose. Then, just as quickly, it turns away and sprints after the others, disappearing into the twisting gutways ahead. You exhale shakily, but the moment is short-lived. Another tremor strikes stronger, deeper. The walls vibrate violently. Something enormous shifts through the chamber overhead, followed by the unmistakable crack of claws penetrating flesh. Then you hear the screams. Not tyrannid screams, those are too purposeful, too rhythmic. These screams are human. Instinct takes over and you rush toward the sound, plunging down a dark tunnel where the air thickens with the overwhelming scent of blood. A membrane wall ahead quivers violently before ripping open under the force of a heavy impact. Hot fluid sprays outward, splattering across your face and chest. You wipe your eyes just in time to see a body thrown through the breach, a human body. Armored in battered flak gear, limbs limp, throat torn open. You freeze, breath trapped in your lungs. The wall behind the body bulges the way a depth-breached hull swells under pressure. And then it rips. A tyrannid warrior bursts through the membrane, its talons slick with blood, its elongated skull gleaming with wet bioluminescence. It takes one step into the tunnel, then hisses sharply as something strikes it from behind. The warrior reels, turns, and lunges back toward the breach. You hear shouting from the other side. Gunfire, lost blasts, metal ricochets, screams. A human strike team lost. Trapped, swallowed by the ship, now fights desperately inside one of the connecting gutways. Before you can move, the tunnel shifts, the walls contracting as the ship senses foreign bodies tearing at its flesh. The membrane floor ripples beneath you. The tunnel twists, narrowing, reshaping itself as though the ship is healing around the invaders. Sealing off portions of itself to isolate the intruders, you stumble forward, catching yourself on a protruding ridge of bone-like cartilage. The wall beside you bulges outward, then bursts open. A guardsman collapses into the tunnel. He's still alive. Barely. His eyes widen when he sees you, but before he can speak, the membrane spasms violently behind him. A gaunt's talon pierces the opening, slicing downward with brutal speed. The guardsman tries to scramble forward, but the wall clamps shut, severing him from the hip down. His scream is short-lived. Blood pools beneath him. The membrane heals instantly, sealing the severed lower half behind the fleshy barrier where the gaunts rip it apart. From the other side, he reaches out weakly. You step back. Horrified, helpless. He collapses into the pooling blood and stops moving. A low, heavy vibration shakes the tunnel again. Not a creature this time. A command. Something enormous is coming. You turn slowly. The gutway behind you darkens. Footsteps echo. Heavy, deliberate, crushing footsteps. A carnifex. You see it long before it reaches you, its massive silhouette filling the tunnel completely. Its carapace scraping the walls, its breath steaming in the cold air. Its eyes glow faintly with predatory focus. Its talons twitch, eager, hungry. The floor sinks slightly beneath its weight. You don't breathe. You don't blink. You don't think. The carnifex steps closer. But it does not attack. It does not see you, not as prey, not as threat. It sees the blood on the floor. It smells the human remains. It turns, and it charges not at you, but toward the intruders trapped behind the membranes deeper in the gutway. The ground shakes violently as it barrels past you, the gust of its movement nearly knocking you off your feet. It smashes through a membrane wall with explosive force, disappearing into the ensuing screams and gunfire. The ship reacts instantly. The gutway reconfigures. Walls flex. Floors tilt. Tunnels seal. Others open. It is isolating the humans, forcing them along a controlled path straight into the jaws of the creatures hunting them. You press against the wall as streams of gaunts flood past, their claws scraping, their bodies shaking with frantic energy. A warrior leaps overhead, gripping the sealing membrane with its talons as it anchors itself to launch deeper into the collapsing network of tunnels. You follow not because it's safe, but because the ship is guiding you again. The tunnels bend and twist, growing darker with each turn. The air thickens with smoke, blood mist, and the sharp tang of tearing flesh. You see flashes of muzzle fire deeper in the gutway. Hear the desperate shouts of soldiers cut off and losing ground. The ship hunts them like prey inside a stomach. You glimpse the battlefield when the final membrane splits. Soldiers retreating through a narrowing artery. Lost fire lighting the walls. Gaunts swarming from every direction. A warrior tearing through armor like paper. A carnifex battering through wounded bodies with unstoppable momentum. The humans don't stand a chance. The last soldier turns, firing a useless volley before a talon pierces his chest and lifts him into the air. His scream echoes once, then the ship closes in around him, swallowing both scream and body with wet finality. Silence follows. The creatures stand perfectly still for a moment, awaiting new commands. The air vibrates faintly with septic pulses. Then, as one, they turn and sprint away, returning to their positions in the ship's shifting network. The corridor quiets. You are alone again. Alone in the dark gutways where war plays out in living flesh, where intruders are crushed like insects inside a predator's throat. You step backward, breath shaking, and the ship opens a new path. One deeper than before. One darker. one meant to lead you toward the heart of what comes next. The gutways fall silent behind you, but the silence is not relief. It is the quiet before a storm so vast and ancient that the air itself seems to hold its breath. The ship's corridors no longer pulse with the random tides of biology. Instead they thrum with a new and terrifying order and accelerating rhythm. That feels like the heartbeat of something titanic stirring from slumber. The floor beneath you tightens, hardens, as if the creature is bracing itself. The walls contract and release in precise cadence, every muscle aligning with a singular, rising tempo. The bioship is waking, not from sleep, from hunger. You feel the shift before you understand it. A cold wind surges from distant chambers, an impossible wind drifting through the body of a creature that should not contain such currents. The air rushes past you like breath pushed through a colossal lung preparing to roar. The walls vibrate. The floor angles downward. The ship's entire anatomy tilts in a slow, deliberate arc, reorienting towards something vast and unseen. You stumble, bracing yourself against a ribbed membrane as the chamber tilts further. A faint groan echoes through the distance, not mechanical, not structural, but the sound of organic mass stretching, reshaping, tightening. The sound of a world-sized organism flexing every one of its living muscles. And the ship speaks, not in words, not in thoughts, but in pressure. A psychic wave washes over you, colder and sharper than anything before, a surge of intent that pierces your mind like ice, sliding beneath the skin. You stagger as it floods through you. The hive mind does not bother to hide this signal. It is too vast, too focused to care about the tiny consciousness standing unnoticed in its veins. The signal says one thing, and one thing only: prepare. The tunnel ahead of you unfurls like a throat opening to swallow the universe. The walls stretch apart, revealing a downward spiral lined with glowing nodes that pulse with septic electricity. The air smells of ozone and acidic vapor. You descend despite your trembling legs, feeling the pressure increase with every step. Each pulse in the walls thuds like a drumbeat, growing faster, louder, more relentless. Then you reach the chamber, and the chamber is enormous. It is the size of a cathedral carved into a living god. The ceiling arches so high that it disappears into darkness, though faint streaks of bioluminescent veins trace the contours of nerve bundles, running upward into unseen organs. The floor curves downward into concentric ridges like the interior of a colossal flower, waiting to bloom. At the center of these ridges lies a massive, pulsating organ, an ovoid mass the size of a manufacturing tower, its surface rippling with tendons thick as armored cables. It radiates heat, light, and psychic tension, but the organ is only the heart of this place. The true terror is what surrounds it. Dozens of birthing pods, stacked in spiraling patterns, hang from the walls like grotesque fruit, their membranes translucent, filled with shapes that writhe and stretch against their confines. Some hold gaunts, others contain organisms you cannot name, creatures with serpentine bodies, skeletal limbs, or wings folded like blades of bone. Their silhouettes twitch, grow, shift, evolve in real time as the hive mind accelerates their formation. The entire chamber pulses with the rhythm of forced evolution. This is where the hive ship awakens its nightmares. You move closer to the central organ, drawn by its hypnotic glow. The heat radiating from it is intense, sticky, heavy, almost suffocating. It feels like standing beside a furnace powered by flesh. Tendrils wrap around it like veins feeding a heart, pulsing in synchronized waves as they pump fluid into the organ. Each pulse sends a shockwave through the chamber, shaking the floor. Something stirs inside the pods. A pod near you bulges outward violently. The membrane stretches thin. A creature within slams its talons against the wall of its sac, slicing grooves into it. The organ's tendrils pump faster. Pressure builds. The creature hammers again and again. Then the membrane ruptures. The newborn tumbles to the floor, an elongated licked variant, its chitin slick with steaming fluid. It rises at once, shaking off the remnants of its cocoon. Its limbs snap into alignment. Its tendrils unfurl like antennae tasting the chamber's air. Its eyeless skull turns toward you for a moment too long, too focused, but the organism's mind is not its own. A septic pulse zaps through the chamber, and the lictor jerks its head upward, responding instantly. Without acknowledging your existence further, it leaps into the shadows, vanishing in a blur of motion. More pods rupture. One spills out a mass of writhing appendages before the creature within pulls itself free. A winged beast unfinished but rapidly mutating, its wings hardening as you watch. Another drops a quadrupedal monstrosity whose jaws pulse with bioplasmic energy. Another drops a brood of gaunts that instantly begin sprinting along the ridges, their claws tearing flesh from the walls to sharpen themselves instinctively. The chamber becomes a storm of movement as dozens. Then hundreds of creatures awaken in unison. The hive mind roars again. This time you hear it not with your ears, but with the marrow of your bones. A psychic thunder that shakes your vision, warping the chamber around you. You fall to your knees, clutching your head as a wave of pure hunger washes through your mind. It is not directed at you, but it is so overwhelming that you taste metal on your tongue and feel blood trickle faintly from your nose when you look up again. The heart organ at the chamber's center begins to expand. Its surface inflates, glowing brighter until it radiates like a furnace stone. Tendrils detach and reattach in rapid, fluid motions, pumping new energy into the organ. The air grows hotter with every pulse. The floor trembles, and then, slowly, the organ opens, not like a door, like a blooming flower. Its thick membranes peel back, unveiling an interior chamber filled with blinding bioluminescent fluid. The smell of burning ozone hits you. A sound like 1,000 bones cracking at once rattles the air. From inside the heart organ, something begins to rise, a towering shape, taller than a tank, clad in layers of bone armor so thick it looks sculpted rather than grown. To massive talons unfold like scythes carved from living stone. A tail drips corrosive fluids that hiss upon hitting the ground. It lifts its head, a hive tyrant, not one grown over time, but forged for war in minutes under the hive mind's direct will. Its wings unfurl with thunderous force, spraying droplets of molten biolite across the chamber. Its psychic presence washes over you, a pressure so immense you nearly collapse. Even though the tyrant is not looking at you, its awareness sweeps through the newborn brood around it, gathering them into a single cohesive force, binding their instincts with its own. The hive tyrant roars, not a sound. A psychic shockwave, the chamber responds immediately. Pods burst open. Warriors leap from their sacks. Gaunts assemble into attack formations automatically. Winged beasts launch into the air, circling like predators waiting for the sky to split open. Excess fluid drains into the floor, sucked away into nutrient canals. Tendrils retract. New ones unfold. Everything moves with perfect precision. The ship is aligning its attack forces, and you are standing inside the heart of this awakening. The hive tyrant lifts its head again and releases a sharper, more focused psychic pulsar signal that makes the air shudder and the walls tighten. The pulse travels through every vein, every corridor, every chamber in the ship. You hear distant roars answering the call. The entire vessel vibrates in unified motion. The hive ship is ready. You turn to leave, heart hammering, when the floor beneath you heaves suddenly. A shockwave tears through the chamber. The walls ripple. The roof quakes. Something enormous outside has changed. You know what it is before the realization fully forms. The ship has reached its prey. The hive tyrant leaps toward the exit tunnel, wings beating with colossal strength. Gaunts flood after it. Warriors sprint along the ridges. Winged beasts dive through the opening. The chamber empties in seconds, leaving only the dimming glow of the central organ behind. You stand alone, trembling, understanding the truth. The hive ship has awakened, and now the galaxy will remember why Tyranids are feared above all. The moment the hive tyrant vanishes into the ascending tunnel, the chamber around you changes again, not gradually, but all at once, like a living organism switching from one biological state into another. The air grows heavy, charged with a static so dense it crawls under your skin. The walls tighten, contracting with a low, resonant shudder that shakes dust from the ceiling membranes. Even the floor seems to stiffen beneath your feet, bracing itself as if the creature knows a colossal impact is imminent. And then you feel it. A sudden, crushing downward pull that snaps the breath from your lungs. The ship is descending. not as a vessel, but as a predator falling from the heavens. The atmosphere outside must be igniting against the beast's hide, superheated plasma scorching the chitinous armor plating, wings of fire trailing behind its colossal mass. You feel the vibrations of re-entry as a rolling quake through the chamber, a violent tremor that nearly knocks you off balance. The walls pulse with thick veins carrying coolant fluids to the exterior shell. The entire bioship tightens its outer layers to brace against the friction of atmospheric penetration. The roar that follows is indescribable. Not heard, but felt. A planetary scream. A continent-wide shudder. The birth cry of annihilation. You stagger as the floor tilts sharply, sending you sliding several meters until you collide with a thick membrane protruding from the wall. The heat in the air intensifies, humidity turning to steam that fogs the chamber in swirling clouds. Vents open along the walls, exhaling waves of superheated vapor as the ship exchanges internal air for something denser, heavier, oxygen-rich. The ship is preparing for surface assault. A deep boom thunders through the chamber. Then another. Then a third. Those are not internal organs. Those are impacts. The bioship has landed. Outside, the world breaks beneath it, forests flattened, mountains cracked, oceans boiling beneath the pressure. You imagine shockwaves rippling across continents as this nightmare leviathan slams into the crust, embedding itself like a burrowing parasite anchoring deep roots. The bioship's tendrils must be extending now, piercing soil and stone, anchoring deep into the mantle to stabilize its massive bulk for the coming harvest. But you have no time to imagine further. The walls split open. A massive membrane retracts overhead, opening a path into a new corridor, this one pulsing with urgent golden light. The air rushing out carries the thick scent of fresh biomass, blood and scorched earth. The world outside is already dying. You ascend. The tunnel rises steeply, its walls tightening and relaxing in alternating pulses to push you forward. With biological assistance, the pressure of septic commands intensifies, vibrating through your bones with every pulse. The closer you climb to the surface, the louder the world becomes, a symphony of distant roaring, sizzling atmospheric gases, and the pounding of tens of thousands of tyrannid organisms flooding into the planet's biosphere. When you emerge into the upper canopy of the ship, the sight before you steals the breath from your throat. The ceiling is mostly gone, peeled back like the upper shell of a cocoon to expose the outside world. A massive circular opening stretches above you, its edges lined with retracting membranes that curl away from the light of a burning sky. Smoke billows across the landscape. Firestorms rage at the horizon. The ground trembles beneath your feet, cracked and molten in places where the ship's tendrils have burrowed deep. The sky is red. The earth is broken, and the tyrannids are everywhere. But the opening above you isn't just an exit. It is an umbilical birth canal for a planetary swarm. Creatures pour out of the ship in unending waves. Gods leap through the opening in coordinated streams, their bodies illuminated by flames carried on ash-thick winds. Warriors stride behind them, their massive limbs absorbing the impact of the descent before they sprint across the battlefield. Like hunting beasts, winged tyrannids descend in spirals, their wings catching thermal updrafts as they scatter across the sky. Searching for pockets of fleeing prey, the hive tyrant soars overhead, its wings cracking the air like thunder as it issues psychic commands that ripple through the swarm, like synchronized heartbeat pulses. Its shadow engulfs you for a moment as it streaks across the burning horizon, toward distant structures, perhaps cities, perhaps strongholds, doomed places where humans, Aldari, or some other species now realize what has arrived upon their world. A shriek rises from beneath the ship. You lean over the lip of the chamber and see the true horror unfold. The ship's tendrils thick, pulsating, filled with scarlet fluid, drill into the ground by the dozens. Each tendril sprouts smaller feeder organisms which burrow into the soil like worms, branching further to form a massive subterranean network. They expand outward in all directions, pushing through rock, metal, bone, and anything else unlucky enough to be in their way. Where they burrow, the ground liquefies, not melted, digested. The tendrils release streams of biolytic enzymes that break down organic matter, reducing forests animal life, and even mineral-rich soil into a thick slurry drawn upward through the tendrils, into the ship's digestive chambers. The very land dissolves underfoot, turning into nutrient soup for the hive mind's evolving war machine. You watch an entire swath of forest collapse like rotting cloth, massive trees buckle. The earth ripples as though becoming fluid. Creatures native wildlife fleeing in terrorfall screaming under the dissolving ground, their bodies breaking apart before they are swallowed into the rising chemical fog. The world seems to sag like wet paper where the tendrils spread their hunger. A sudden crack thunders to your left. A towering structure of bone unfolds. From the ship's side, an organic tower lined with pulsating sacs like the chambers of a colossal heart. It rises into the sky, swaying slightly as its foundation anchors itself deeper into the ship. Moments later, spores begin launching from its apex, streaking into the sky like biological artillery. They arc outward, detonating over distant population centers in blooms of toxic gas that spread into clouds of controlled plague. This planet is doomed. You grip the edge of the chamber, breath trembling, heart pounding. The sight overwhelms you, the scale of destruction, the utter inevitability of consumption, the horrifying precision with which the tyrannids feed. This is not slaughter. It is farming. It is harvesting. It is the end of a biosphere. Another roar shakes the sky as a trigger erupts from one of the tendrils, bursting into open air before tunneling rapidly into the planet's crust to cut off escape routes. Underground, bioplasma cannons on the ship's exterior begin firing, saturating the land with corroding energy that melts armored vehicles and detonates fortifications. You see pockets of resistance below. Small, desperate, hopeless. A squadron of tanks fires futile volleys into the swarm, shells detonating across gaunt bodies only to be absorbed by the sheer volume of creatures pouring across the field. A formation of soldiers unleashes lost lines that carve glowing paths through the air, before being drowned under a pack of ravenous hormagaunts leaping from ridge to ridge. A brave, lone figure wearing crimson power armor charges toward a warrior, chainsword screaming, but the swarm envelops him in seconds, and the sword falls to the dirt, still humming. Nothing can stop this. Not now. Not here. The hive mind has arrived in full. Another psychic wave erupts from the hive tyrant. This one strong enough to make your ears ring despite not being a sound. You feel it ripple across the battlefield, sweeping through every organism. The swarm moves faster. Tactics shift instantly. Units reposition. A colossal carnifex barrels toward a fortified bunker, smashing through reinforced walls with brute strength. Spore mines drift through broken windows before detonating inside, sending flames and flesh into screaming chaos. You step back from the edge, breath unsteady. And then you see something that chills you deeper than anything else. The ship itself begins to spread. Organic plates peel open along its lower sections, revealing cavernous chambers filled with still writhing tendrils and pulsing organs. The land beneath the ship sinks as roots dig deeper. The entire organism is embedding itself, transforming from a star-faring predator into a planetary parasitic engine. It is becoming the planet. You stumble away, unable to comprehend the enormity of what you are witnessing. Every chamber you saw, every vat, every forge, every pool, every engine is now synchronized toward a single purpose, devouring a world. And then, faintly, you feel the psychic whisper again, not directed at you, not concerned with you, barely acknowledging your existence, just a residual echo carried on the tidal wave of hunger. Consume. The air at the top of the hive ship tastes different now. Heavier, thicker, saturated with ash and the chemical sting of a world, collapsing beneath the hunger of something ancient and unstoppable. You lean against a ridge of hardened chitin, catching your breath as the chaos unfolding below washes through your senses like roaring tides. The battlefield is no longer a battle, it is a burial ground in motion, a place where every living thing is being swallowed into a singular, merciless purpose. The sky shudders with fire, not the fire of human weapons or natural storms, but the fire of the planet's atmosphere igniting in reaction to spores burning through it, like hot cinders from a collapsing forest. The clouds glow orange, red, and sickly green. Lightning streaks across the horizon in jagged lines, echoing the electrical discharges erupting from spore chimneys growing rapidly from the ship's hull. These chimneys belch clouds of toxic mist into the air, spreading as living haze that hunts for lungs to choke and oceans to poison. You want to look away, but you can't, because the ship is still changing. The chamber around you flexes, tightening like muscle preparing for another metamorphosis. The walls ripple with fresh veins. The air vibrates with the low thrum of accelerating metabolism. It dawns on you that everything you've witnessed up to now, the digestion pools, the bioforges, the seps chambers, the engines, was preparation for this moment. The moment where the ship becomes the world's executioner. A deep tremor shakes the earth again. Below, a tendril as thick as a void ship's hull plunges deeper into the planet's crust. The ground cracks open around it, molten rock spraying upward in violent bursts. The tendril pulses, expanding and contracting as it absorbs geothermal heat and mineral deposits, turning them into nutrient slurry that is pumped back into the ship's internal organs. The planet is being drained alive. You hear faint cries from below, human voices, distorted by distance and choked air. Their shouts rise briefly above the chaos before being drowned again, beneath the screech of tyrannid organisms surging toward them. Squad after squad of soldiers is consumed. Vehicles are overturned or melted. Weapons are torn from trembling hands before those hands follow them into the swarm's gaping maws. A sudden gust of wind hits your face. You jerk upward, watching in awe as a swarm of winged tyrannids darkens the sky. Thousands of them, gargoyles, harpies. Winged gaunts spiral down from the smoke clouds like a descending night. Their wings beat in perfect rhythm, a living storm of teeth and claws. They scatter across the burning landscape, hunting those who flee, sweeping through the ruins of buildings like blades of bone cutting through paper. Far below them, the land itself shivers. A monstrous silhouette erupts from a collapsed Regenement's hierophant biotitan, breaking through the soil in a thunderous explosion of debris. Its towering legs crush what remains of a ruined settlement. Its multi-layered carapace is streaked with glowing chemical fluids. It raises its massive scythed limbs and releases a screech so deep it vibrates through your sternum. The hive tyrant dives beside it, issuing commands that ripple like psychic lightning across the battlefield. Behind them, more tyrannid monstrosities emerge, triggons crawling from subterranean tunnels, exocrines setting themselves into firing positions. Carnifex is charging in thunderous packs that flatten everything in their path. The swarm has stopped being an army. It has become a tide, a biological apocalypse sweeping across a dying world. You turn away from the sight, forcing your trembling legs to carry you deeper into the chamber. The membrane pathway leading downward opens again, beckoning you like the throat of a predator. You descend, unable to stop yourself, drawn by the strange and terrible knowledge that something deeper within the ship is calling to you. The air cools as you move away from the surface. The roar of the battlefield fades into a muffled, distant hum. The tunnel narrows, then widens again, leading you into a chamber you haven't seen before, a chamber that feels impossibly old. Older than the hive tyrant, older than the ship, older than any singular organism. A chamber that feels like memory. It is dark at first, save for faint glimmers of bioluminescent threads tracing the walls. The air is colder than any part of the ship you felt. A slow pulse echoes softly, like distant, ancient breath. At the center of the chamber lies a vast pool, not of digestion acids, not of bioforge fluid, but a thick, almost glass-like biolite. It shimmers softly, its surface reflecting shifting images like a liquid mirror. You approach slowly. The surface of the pool flickers with images, not memories of this world, but memories of countless worlds the tyrannids have consumed. Cities burning, forests collapsing under advancing tendrils, oceans swallowed by spore storms, creatures screaming as they are dragged into biomass pits, stars seen from orbit moments before ships fall to the swarm. It is a history written in hunger. And the pool shows you more. It shows you the Leviathan tendril splitting a starfaring species in two. It shows you Behemoth breaking through the defenses of Ultramar. It shows you Kronos devouring psychers to weaken daemonic incursions. It shows you Kraken shattering Imperial fleets with its fractal swarms. You realize with chilling clarity that the Tyranids do not simply consume life. They consume experience. They learn from each world, each victory, each death. They adapt not just in biology but in strategy. Every predator they face becomes a nutrient. Every weapon used against them becomes a blueprint for the next stage of evolution. The pool shimmers, and then it shows you. Now, the planet above struggling in its last minutes of existence. The swarm tightening its grip. The ship's tendrils expanding like the roots of a titan plant. And at the center of the hive fleet something deeper. Something vast. Something that feels like the first breath of the cosmos drawn by an unimaginable mouth. The hive mind is watching, not just the world, not just the battle. You. A psychic pressure presses into your thoughts. Gentle yet terrifying in its depth. It feels like the surface of an ocean pressing lightly against your skull, not enough to crush, but enough to show that it easily could. You feel your breath catch. Your limbs tremble. Thoughts fade at the edges for a moment. You sense what it means to stand inside the attention of a galaxy-spanning consciousness. There is no hatred in it, no malice, no cruelty, only hunger so absolute it is indistinguishable from nature itself. And then the pressure disappears, the pull stills, the chamber grows. Quiet, the hive mind has dismissed you. Again, not because you escaped its focus, and not because it grew bored, but because you were never the point. You were an anomaly. A flicker, a moment in its peripheral vision, a single drifting spore in a storm of cosmic scale. You collapse to your knees, exhaling shakily, the imprint of that touch lingering in your bones like frost. The chamber darkens, the pool dims, the ship's heartbeat slows, shifting into a steady rhythm. The world above has gone completely. Consumed, stripped, emptied. You feel the shift as the tendrils retract, pulling the last remnants of biomatter into the ship's lower chambers. You feel the engines stirring again. You feel the SAPS nodes strengthening their connections. You feel the hive tyrant returning, its psychic command a final signal to depart. The ship is full. The hunger temporarily satisfied. The bioship tightens. The engines roar. The tendrils withdraw. And with a trembling shudder, the creature launches itself back into the heavens, leaving behind nothing but dust, bone, and silence. Where a living world once spun through the void. You remain inside it, small, fragile, trembling, a witness to the last breath of a dying world, and to the first breath of the next world the Tyranids will destroy.